So I grew up in Whangarei with a great family, had 2 sisters, lived at the beach, idyllic childhood. And then when I turned 17, my mum was driving and she fell asleep at the wheel. The car flipped, and as a consequence, I sustained a spinal cord injury to my neck. I lost control of my arms, my hands, and my legs, and I spent the next 7 months in Auckland Hospital. We just all assumed it would get better, but it didn't. I do remember spiralling into a really dark depression. I couldn't imagine living my life using a wheelchair or not having the use of my arms. So I took a lot of pills and ended up in hospital in a coma. That was my first suicide attempt, and I was pretty angry it hadn't worked, to be honest. I stopped sleeping. I thought getting into work would help me, so I worked harder, I studied harder, and it was at that point that I tried, to end it again. Although at this point it wasn't so much about committing suicide, it was more about stopping. The 4th time I tried it, I went to the psychologist at the suicide outreach clinic, and that was the first time that I started talking about assisted suicide. The psychologist and a psychiatrist both suggested that I did explore assisted suicide in places overseas, such as Switzerland. They didn't ask me about my lifestyle, my coping mechanisms. It was just, she's got a broken neck, she can't move, why would she want to live? So instead of, committing suicide, which seems like a tragedy, assisted suicide didn't seem so bad because it was somebody helping me, and it was, controlled by the medical profession. What I didn't realise was it wasn't my broken neck that was the problem. I just didn't have the skills to cope. When I had decided that I didn't want to be here, I'd convinced myself that was something everybody else was in agreement with as well. I guess I felt like a burden on society, on my friends, on my family. I just didn't feel like I was of value. I was scheduled to have neck surgery to stabilise the metalwork in my neck. I guess an ironic twist was the surgery went really badly, and I ended up with a screw put into my spine, which they actually had to take out of my spinal cord, causing the worst pain I've ever felt in my life and causing significant disability. So I lost a lot more movement. I lost triceps, I lost wrist function, I lost everything. The irony is, because I had to stop working and I had to put everything on hold, I got sleep. I actually started reflecting on my life and my lifestyle. And I read a book by a woman who is now my PhD supervisor, and she talks about quality of life. And I realised that it wasn't my disability that was the problem. It was all the stuff that was manifesting in my head. The reality is, if assisted suicide, if euthanasia, if it was available in New Zealand, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead, 6 feet under.
We have to take the white coat off euthanasia. That people see a doctor, they expect a doctor to be ethical, they expect a doctor to try to help them to live as long as possible, because we always think of medical treatment as being at least with the intention of doing good and never to do harm.
When I see and examine a proposed law that is going to allow the most vulnerable members of our community to suddenly find themselves eligible to be euthanised, or to be helped to commit suicide by our government, under our government's supervision, and by the medical profession, I get very, very concerned.
The proposals for changing the law tend to be put forward as if they are a sort of a minor tweaking of the law. They're not. For the first time, we will be saying that it is legitimate for one person to either bring about the death of another person or to be complicit in that person taking their own life. Now, we don't have laws like that at the moment. In fact, We abolished the only law like that we have, which was the law on capital punishment.
The reality is, when you look overseas at the jurisdictions that have allowed euthanasia, the overwhelming number of people who choose euthanasia don't do it because of a fear of physical harm or of physical pain. They do it for psychological reasons.
I can remember arguing with one of the main proponents of it in Quebec. He said there'll never be more than 100 cases a year. And currently, the figures in Canada are so far within the first 2 years of it coming in, there's been somewhere around 7,000 cases.
I was very, very pro-euthanasia, pro-assisted suicide till about 3 years ago. So I spent nearly 20 years wishing that there was a bill like this in place and, you know, even arguing for it. But in hindsight, it was just because I wasn't coping with my life.
We need to really look long and hard at what exactly are we doing here, what message are we sending to our country's most vulnerable, and what is the impact of legislating this type of law. And we need to do that by borrowing from the experiences with similar kinds of laws in other jurisdictions. The Netherlands has seen a steady increase and expansion of euthanasia into areas such as psychiatric illness, from children who are aged 12 years of age and over, to now include newborn infants who are seriously disabled under the Groningen Protocol.
The bills that have been rejected in the United Kingdom are much more tightly restricted than David Seymour's bill, or the bills which have been enacted in other jurisdictions. It's to say we'll have a law that says to doctors, you have a license to do this. You can do this provided A, B, and C happens. Now that's a completely different concept. The purpose of the criminal law isn't to give options and choices to some. It's to give protection to all of us, and particularly the most vulnerable among us.
I know that there are individual cases that are absolutely heartbreaking, and the people who see those and are promoting euthanasia, they want it for the very best reasons. They don't want it to go wild. They say it can be controlled, but the problem is it can't. That once you step over that line, there is no logical stopping point. It's simply a state-approved suicide.
Even being presented with the option of, well, this could be an idea, something to consider, it immediately devalues my life. I'm contributing in a really positive way to humanity, and that's exciting for me. That's great. It makes me feel really good about myself and about my life and about helping others, you know, because it's promoting kindness, it's promoting love, and that's what I feel, you know, this world really needs.